are not an affordable option in the short term. And also for OPM to construct more water supply systems and latrines to cater for increasing influx of refugees. And then girls to be provided with life skills, such as making of reusable sanitary pads to avoid dependence on donors for everything. The other challenge is around management of natural resources, where the committee observed that with the intense pressure on natural resources, refugees had started conflicting with host communities on natural resources for survival. The committee recommends for allocation of additional financial resources and measures for natural resource conservation. The committee further observed that the focus of the current livelihoods support program for beneficiary households in refugee host communities were limited to existing economic activities such as subsistence agriculture, petty trade, few livestock, traditional bricklaying, support for border and taxi transporters. And there, the committee recommends that government programs for host communities should focus on community empowerment initiatives such as specialized skills training and value addition to existing production process. The committee also observes that the number of refugees arriving in the country has been increasing in a high rate, raising concerns over the long-term sustainability. The committee recommends additional diplomatic efforts to be made to ensure that peace and tranquility prevails in the neighboring countries to enable refugees resettle in their countries of origin, and also for national refugee policy to be reviewed in collaboration with regional governments in order to ensure that government and UNHCR, which is a leading UN agency supporting refugees, so that they can resettle excess refugees to third countries. In addition, the committee recommends that additional funding should be allocated to OPM for purposes of undertaking mobilization and sensitization activities needed for peaceful coexistence between refugees and host communities, as well as establishing structured economic interventions to uplift the economic prospect of refugees, prospect of host communities as confidence building mechanism for the empowerment of host communities. And then facilitating affirmative action to host districts in the areas of social services, such as healthcare and education. And the last one under that is about improving agricultural productivity among host communities through affordable irrigation schemes to ensure food security for host communities who are usually not beneficiaries of the UN food funding. The committee observes that while local governments hosting refugee settlements have additional pressure on their social services, they do not control additional funding for extra refugee population in their districts. The committee therefore recommends that existing budget support to refugees, which is currently centralized in the office of the Prime Minister, should be restructured so that some funds are reallocated and managed by host local governments. This would stimulate local growth and stern local descent to refugees. The committee observes that the continued influx of new arrivals from South Sudan, which happened throughout from 2020 to 2023, created shortage of land for settlement of new arrivals, and also poor road networks within the settlements due to heavy rains. The committee therefore recommends that government of Uganda should expedite the compensation to the landowners where refugee settlements and other institutional and social services such as schools and health centers were constructed, and also rehabilitating roads within the host communities and refugee settlements. The other challenge is about land wrangles. The committee observed that an impending conflict over land ownership and use in refugee settlement is existing. The committee identified issues within the area of land management. One, for accommodating refugees, host communities had high expectations for material benefits in exchange for their land. However, this was not forthcoming. There were also disagreements over land boundaries among different host communities and with refugees, which created an active conflict over land use and land ownership. The other is about property owners. Some of them were threatening to repossess land formerly given to refugees due to delayed compensation. The other is about refugees who refused to settle in their located plots, and they chose to migrate to other zones in an attempt to locate their loved ones, which resulted into overcrowding of these particular zones. There was also shortage of land for agriculture, leading to fear of food security among the host communities. The committee recommends that government should fast-track settlements of compensation claims by host communities to ensure that host community goodwill is not taken for granted. And also to conduct further negotiations with the host communities for more land on a rental basis in pursuit of sustainable food production and reducing dependence on donors for refugees' food supply. The other challenge is about the donor cuts. The committee observed that budget cuts to refugees programs was affecting service delivery. Specifically, Dr. Deep program and USMID was scheduled to end operations in December 2023 in all the areas we visited, in the north, in Changwali, and also in Chiriandongo. In Lamu, when donors pulled out of the Street Child Project, 37 teachers who were paid under the project were laid off, thereby increasing the teacher-pupils ratio from 1 to 58 up to 1 to 164. In Chegegwa, also a similar issue. Out of 338 teachers in schools, only 98 of them were on government payroll, and donor partners were paying the remaining 240 teachers. However, members were informed that a total of 136 teachers and 50 teaching assistants had their contracts terminated by the end of February 2023 due to reduced donor funding across all the schools in the settlements. In Lamua also, it is a similar issue about general food assistance in the settlement with collection points which were established under the UN World Food Program. And there is also reduced food allocation as a result of the donor cuts, funding cuts. The committee recommends that government needs to have contingency financial plans for refugees in situations where donor funding dwindles, such as during COVID-19 crisis, and also to absorb teachers recruited under donor support once the project are phased out, and to have a policy to curtail the inflow of refugees to a sustainable level beyond the goodwill of donors. In conclusion, Right Honorable Speaker and colleagues, Uganda, for all its hospitality, has under difficult circumstances handled the large inflow of refugees from the Great Lakes region. This has placed a lot of pressure on social services, especially in host communities in the country. Currently, in the health sector, there's approximately 1 doctor to every 24,000 citizens and 1 nurse per 11,000 people. Because of the huge inflow of refugees amidst decreasing donor support, Uganda can hardly cope with this trend. The committee strongly recommends that government revisits its refugee policy to forestall probable long-term conflict resulting from overflow of refugees and underfunding resulting from cuts in budgetary support from donors. Right Honorable Speaker and colleagues, I beg to report.